This is the Mets Postcast, your instant game reaction for the New York Mets. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The Mets rallied to load the bases in the ninth inning, but their comeback came up just a little bit short as they fall to the Arizona Diamondbacks 4-3 for only their second home loss of the season. Welcome in to the Mets Postcast here on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel and in the Locked On Mets podcast feed. I am your Postcast host, Chris Schubert, here with you after each and every Mets game throughout the course of the season, recapping it all, and what a wild one the Mets played tonight. A game that they were leading for a large portion. Ryne Stanek once again blew a lead. That's certainly going to be something that we talk about a lot here today on the show. And then the Mets forcing the Diamondbacks to remove their closer from this game. Took a bunch of great at-bats and were able to load the bases down 4-3. Just were not able to complete the comeback. But at least for me, we'll talk about the ninth inning comeback a little bit later on. And this was a story of runners in scoring position for this offense. But the bullpen, certainly a topic of conversation, and one person in particular.
This is what you'll be talking about.
Mets had a 1-0 lead in the seventh inning of this one, and they handed things over to Ryne Stanek, who his last two times out gave up the leads in Washington, and he made it a three-pack. He made it three straight performances in which he gave up the lead. And when talking about bullpens, I usually use the analogy of a trust tree, and the people that are higher up on the trust tree, they're on the branches towards the top of the tree. Those are the guys that you go to and you have full confidence in, that you believe in, that you think are always going to get the job done. And then as you go lower and lower down that trust tree, they're the guys that you would rather not see in those high leverage situations. And you would rather them be in those low leverage situations until they prove to themselves to you that you want to have them in that spot. And during the playoffs last year, Ryne Stanek was the only guy for me that was on the trust tree. I mean, he was lights out in the postseason for this team at a time where Edwin Diaz was constantly making us sweat in the postseason, was constantly putting traffic on the base paths and making us worry about every ninth inning, every final couple of outs that the Mets would try to get. Ryne Stanek did a really nice job in the postseason for this team. And going into this season, had a really nice idea of Stanek in the eighth, leading to Diaz in the ninth. And the last couple of nights out, it has been rough for Ryne Stanek to the point where he is lower down the trust tree, if not on the trust tree at all at this point. I don't know if after three consecutive appearances like this, that you can go to Ryne Stanek in these high leverage situations. I think the easiest thing that you can do is remove him from high leverage stuff, put him more in low leverage environments to gain his confidence back. I mean, you put him in a one-run game tonight that he needed to hold down a lead, and you got some great pitching. And we'll talk about the great pitching that the Mets got tonight from Huascar, Brazoban, and Brandon Waddell. And I saw somebody ask in the chat before we pushed the go live button about why Brazoban started tonight. The Mets elected to go with an opener, and then Brandon Waddell, who hadn't pitched in the big leagues since 2021, was called up and asked to piggyback off of Huascar Brazoban, and he delivered in a big way. And we'll get all the praise on those two guys, specifically Waddell, here in a little bit. But this was a 1-0 lead late, and Stanek for the third straight time gave it up. And then some insurance runs off of Chris Davinsky. I didn't necessarily mind what Carlos was trying to do there. Fresh arms that you called up to help give you reinforcements. Davinsky had been pitching well down in Syracuse with the AAA team, so I didn't have a problem with giving him that opportunity there, and did pretty well other than the couple of hits that set up the 2 sac flies. And those insurance runs for Arizona played a huge factor in this game, because instead of this being 2-1 or even 3-1, it's 4-1, and that's the difference when the Mets are only able to get 2 runs across with their rally in the ninth inning. But the Mets right now have a bit of a bullpen crisis. I mean, you look up and down right now. They have Jose Butto, who pitched well his last time out, 29 pitches, but has been up and down. It's been a bit of a roller coaster. Reed Garrett has been good lately. Edwin Diaz has been up and down, but lately has been putting up zeros. But they're just maneuvering guys back and forth. Danny Young got put on the IL today. AJ Minter doesn't look like he's coming back anytime soon. They had Davinsky and Waddell up, you would assume that there's going to be a roster move here after the game that sends Waddell down. And I know we've said this in the past, but I wonder if it's time to hit the break glass and get Dedel Nunez up to this team so that he can replace Ryne Stanek for those high leverage situations in the 8th inning and be your backup closer. And just because you need a fresh arm with Waddell and now Danny Young down, you need somebody else in there. And I wonder if it's time to get Dedel Nunez back up here and have him be a permanent mainstay in this bullpen, because they certainly need it. They need some stability down there. And again, that's not the entire story from this game. We will talk about some of the other issues, specifically on offense, that the Mets had before the 9th inning. But when you, for the 3rd straight outing, go out there and give up a lead, it's got to be one of the main things that we talk about, because Ryne Stanek, who was a trustworthy member of this bullpen in the postseason and at the start of this year, has seemingly lost his way over the last couple of days. And I still believe that stuff plays. When you can throw it 100, 101, if you get your confidence back, you have the type of stuff that can be dominant. I just think the Mets need to take it a little easy with Ryne Stanek. I'm looking up at the SNY postcast. I mean, he's had an inning and a third his last 3 outings and he's given up like 6 runs. So it's just not working for Ryne Stanek. And so I think there needs to be a shift for Stanek out of that high leverage stuff, and hopefully somebody else can get put into that spot. Maybe it's Nunez, maybe it's Reed Garrett, maybe it's Max Kranick. But the Mets have to do some soul searching and kind of reorder this bullpen. We're going to talk about Brandon Waddell, and I can see everybody talking in the chat. I know you want to talk about the offense. I would like to talk about the offense as well, because until that 9th inning rally, it was after scoring 27 runs over the previous 2 days. There was not a lot of offense to be found. So we will talk about all of that on the other side. You ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. This isn't just a budgeting app. Think of it as a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of trying to juggle multiple apps, Monarch you can use to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. You want to work with a partner on this? Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Perhaps you're looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious. Well, crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios, one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. They're little green wonders that pack a protein punch. The no-shells Wonderful Pistachios are for the grab-and-go ease. Whether you're running between meetings or dropping off the kids, Wonderful Pistachios are the snack that works as hard as you do. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Back here on the Mets Postcast on the Locked On Mets podcast feed and on the Locked On Mets YouTube channel. And I can see we got some angry people tonight. And this was a tough one for the New York Mets to only score 1 run and then rally late and have Stanek blow it, and the management of the bullpen. And I see some people upset with not keeping Waddell in longer, for going to Davinsky instead of using Edwin Diaz in the 9th. And I think if there is one move that I can get behind, or one criticism of Carlos, and I've criticized Carlos for sticking with starting pitchers too long and not having a quick enough hook. But I didn't mind taking Waddell out. You have to understand that this is a guy who hasn't pitched in the big leagues in 4 years. You're calling him up to be a piggyback off of an opener. You don't want to expose him to this Diamondbacks lineup too many times. I did not have an issue with, after you get into the 6th, 7th inning, of maybe having a quicker hook with Waddell. He was excellent tonight. Excellent. I mean, I don't think any of us had that on our bingo card, that piggybacking off of Huascar Brazoban, you would get 4 1/3 scoreless innings with only 3 hits and not a single walk, 4 strikeouts. That was a excellent spot start, whatever you want to call it, piggybacking off of Brazoban, who had 2 scoreless innings. I mean, if I told you before the game the Mets were going to get 6 1/3 scoreless from Brazoban and Waddell, you would have signed up for it right on the spot. I think in the moment, because Waddell's pitching really well, you want to stay with him. But you've got a bullpen that was relatively fresh. The only person who pitched yesterday that was available, that was in the bullpen tonight, was Jose Butto, who threw 29 pitches. So everybody else is fresh. You try to win this game. You're holding on to a 1-0 lead. The bullpen is very clearly your strength over Brandon Waddell. I think we can all agree with that. I mean, before yesterday, how many of you knew who Brandon Waddell was? And that's no shot to Brandon Waddell. He was excellent tonight. But before yesterday, before the team announced that he was going to get called up and be a part of this, how many of us were keeping tabs on what he was doing down in AAA? Instead, our focus has been on Edwin Diaz, who's been taking care of business, getting saves. Reed Garrett, who's been great. Huascar Brazoban, who's been great and was great again. This is what the strength of this team has been most of the year, is their bullpen. So I have no problem for Carlos erring on the side of, I'm going to go with my relatively fresh bullpen to try to hold on to a 1-0 lead instead of asking this kid who's making his first appearance in 4 seasons to come up and try to get me through the 7th inning. That move I didn't necessarily have an issue with. If you want to make the argument that Edwin Diaz should have been in that game where it's 1 run, even though you're the home team, to try to keep the game close, we can have that conversation, and I don't think you're necessarily wrong. Since he hadn't pitched on Saturday, that might have been a good chance to get him into the game. They had him up. So you certainly know that Carlos was thinking about it. You certainly know that the Mets were considering doing that. They ultimately decided to go with Davinsky, and, it came back to bite them a little bit with those 2 insurance runs that, again, were the difference when the Mets scored 2 in the bottom of the 9th. But the other story from this game, other than Stanek and sticking with Davinsky instead of going with Diaz, is the Mets were 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position tonight. And you're not going to win baseball games if you can't come through in those moments. Vientos got 3 cracks at it. He was 0 for 3. Soto got 2 cracks at it. He was 0 2. Alvarez, Marte, Lindor, Winker, McNeil all went 0 for 1. They left 13 guys on base. They did not come through in those moments with runners in scoring position. And in the 9th inning, they came up just a little bit short. I thought they took some of their best at-bats, obviously, there in that 9th inning. Taylor crushes a home run. He had some really good at-bats. He's had a great series defensively. 3-hit night tonight, including the home run. Thought he was really impressive tonight. Lindor, patience draws the walk. Soto, patience draws the walk. Alonso works a nice count and unfortunately gets hit on the hand by a pitch. And then Vientos does not have a good at-bat. I think that was your first bad at-bat of the inning. And then Winker, the ground ball that may or may not have hit his foot. I don't know. The play's not reviewable, whatever. We've this week already discussed, or within the last week have discussed plays that we would love to be able to be reviewable that aren't. Triple play in Washington comes to mind. And then McNeil intentionally walked, and then Alvarez doesn't take a necessarily great at-bat. This team scored 27 runs over the last 2 days. So I don't want to all of a sudden cry poverty about the Mets' lack of runs, right? I don't want to cry that this team can't score. They scored 27 runs over the last 2 games. Did they not come through tonight? Absolutely. They scored 1 run by the time Ryne Stanek came into the game. That was a huge problem because they had opportunities. But Mark Vientos, who came up short in the 9th inning, was the guy who got the Mets out in front with a home run. I know there is just this big groundswell of momentum to keep crushing Juan Soto, and I get it. He's getting paid a lot of money. He's the number 2 hitter. He went 0 for 4 tonight. There needs to be production out of Soto at some point, but he is still drawing walks. He's still getting on base. That's still an important part of what his game is. And at some point, that is going to turn around, and we'd like it to be sooner rather than later. But an 0 for 4 night is an 0 for 4 night, and you can't really avoid it. But I think some of us are acting tonight like the Mets are 10-21 instead of a team that's 21-10. Did they lose a game tonight that they could have very easily won? Yes. Did they lose a game tonight that they were leading in the late innings? Absolutely. Did they have multiple opportunities throughout the game, including the 9th inning when they had the bases loaded to win the game? Yes. They had all of those things. They came up short. But we have to remember the bigger picture here, everybody. They are 31 games into the season. That is only their second home loss. Second home loss. They are 13-2 at home this season. It's their first home loss in 21 days, in 3 weeks. Was tonight bad? Yes. Was tonight a bunch of missed opportunities? Absolutely. But we forget that they scored 27 runs over the last 2 days. And we're just going to oscillate back and forth every other day based on what this team is doing. Are there things that need to be changed and tweaked? Yes. This team has to figure out their bullpen. There is a lot of turnover that is occurring within the last couple of days and some guys that are underperforming that are going to force the Mets to take a good hard look in the mirror, I think, tonight and into tomorrow, and then make some changes. Soto moving down in the lineup, not happening. It's not happening. He's going to stay in that 2 spot, and he's going to work through whatever quote unquote struggles everybody thinks he's having. Again, if the guy's hitting 241 with a 368 on base percentage is struggling, I get it. You pay guys $765 million. I think we'd like to see some more home runs and some more RBIs. I'm very well aware, but 241 with a 368 on base percentage, drew a walk there in the 9th inning, wasn't pressing, wasn't trying to do too much, just kept the inning alive, which is exactly what he does. 31 games into the season, it will turn around for Juan Soto here at some point, and you will start to see the guy that the Mets paid all of that money for. This was a night of missed opportunities, and it was a night for a member of this Mets bullpen who has been struggling, continuing to struggle, that I think is going to force the Mets to think long and hard about what his role is moving forward. And I think the worst part about all of this is this game was a disservice to Huascar Brazoban and Brandon Waddell. It was a disservice to how well those two guys pitched and what they were able to give the New York Mets. But I say this all the time, so regular listeners of the postcast will know. The beautiful thing about this game is there's another chance tomorrow to make us completely forget about yesterday. And that's what the Mets will do when they will send their ace, Kodai Senga, to the mound to take on Zach Allen in the finale of this series and try to get a series win. So the beautiful thing is tomorrow, they can make us forget about it all, just like earlier this week. They scored 19 runs to make us forget about what happened the day before. The Mets only one time this season have lost back-to-back games. And until they do it again, let's believe in this team to be able to turn it around, because they've responded and they've gotten up from a lot worse. They have 2 losses in the last couple of days that are a lot worse than this one, and they've gotten up from both of those. So we'll see that resiliency tomorrow for this team. And again, with Kodai Senga on the mound, you'd have to believe the Mets have a really good chance of winning. That is going to do it for us here on the Mets Postcast. If you are new here, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you are notified when we go live. We appreciate you being here, sharing your thoughts. Listen, I know we like to have a little dialogue, a little back and forth here. Appreciate all of you being here. Appreciate all of you being passionate and wanting to share your thoughts on this team, on this game, on this season. I greatly do appreciate it. Even if we don't necessarily always agree, I still appreciate the banter and I still appreciate the back and forth. But the Mets will go for the series win tomorrow. They will turn it over to Kodai Senga, and they will look to make up for the missed opportunities that they had tonight. And we'll be right back here with the Mets Postcast to break it all down. Have a good one, everybody.